morning, and welcome to the Mental Breakdown Morning Show. I'm Dr. Bernie Wilkinson.
I'm Dr. Richard Marshall.
Richard, it's Wednesday morning, October 12th. We're midway through, or we're almost midway through October already,
Right.
which is both exciting and troubling all at the same time. Time is just flying by.
When you're having fun.
Or
It does go by quickly.
yes.
So, Wednesday feels like, I don't know. It's like
I like Wednesdays.
we only have a few more days left to get it all finished.
I like Wednesdays, but my Wednesday today is pretty packed
today.
full of things. Yeah, I got to drive all over the place and do all kinds of things today. So it's gonna be a challenging day.
And okay.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Right.
We'll see how I feel this afternoon.
Yeah.
Because right now I like Wednesdays. We'll see how this afternoon.
When I was a teacher, when I was teaching, we used to call Wednesday hump day. If you get over Wednesday, then you have Thursday and Friday, and not a lot happens on Fridays in a lot of workplaces.
Right.
Casual Friday and all that stuff. So by the time you got past Wednesday, you're on the downhill slide. But you and I don't. Wednesday's not hump day. Wednesday feels like the beginning of the week.
Wednesday is
around here.
Wednesday is I'm starting to get some momentum going.
That's right. I can slide into the next 4 or 5 work days. Okay.
It's perfect.
Yes, he is a slave driver. He has set up a sweatshop here in Lakeland, Florida. We have a good time here. We enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, I want to, before we kind of get into our topic or our letter from a listener today, I want to mention a couple of other correspondences that we've received over the last couple of days, and one of them kind of mentioned something that you mentioned yesterday.
I'm afraid to hear this.
It was from a listener, Noreen. And Noreen, we love it that you listen from all the way up in northern New Jersey. And she thought that it was interesting that you thought that 85 degrees was cold.
What's cooler? I mean, it is.
She said it was 34 degrees.
34?
34.
That's not. Humans can't live in that weather. They should migrate back to the equator. 34 degrees?
34 degrees.
Things freeze at 32.
Yeah.
Water freezes.
I mean, it's not until January, February-ish if it ever gets that cold here in Florida.
I remember one time I went to Europe, and it was about 80 or 90 degrees here, and it was winter there, and it was about 20 below. So there was a 100-degree difference. I stepped off the airplane. It took my breath away.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
So Noreen, you're right. 85 isn't cold, but it's a chill. There's a chill in the air at 85 or 80, So.
Yeah. That happened to me once. I flew to Chicago.
See?
And it was like 90-something degrees here, and then when I got off the plane there, it was in the 30s, and it was...
It's breathtaking.
Yeah, but when you're in the airport, I didn't really notice. It was like, it's not bad.
You're going to step out into the weather.
And then you step out, and the wind hits you, especially in Chicago. Wow.
Shocking.
Another email we got was from some friends of ours in Georgia who are just now getting back home and back to work and everything after Hurricane Matthew over the weekend. And so, of course, we're thinking about you guys and hope that everybody's safe and doing well.
Yeah, we have friends on the Sea Islands, off the coast of Georgia, and I guess they really took some devastating winds and rains and flooding, and so we'll be thinking about you guys in Georgia.
Yeah, hope everything is okay up there. So
yeah.
Well, the topic for today comes from a letter that we got from a listener. Her name is Kim, and this is what she wrote. Okay, she wrote, "My 13-year-old son, who is already bigger and stronger than his father and I, is completely refusing to go to school. He will not get dressed on his own, and I can no longer force him to put his school clothes on. He has missed a lot of days already, and his school is really getting frustrated with the situation. In addition, my work is suffering because I'm late most days because of this battle. What do I do when my teenage child refuses to go to school?"
Boy, that's a problem because most schools have attendance policies, and you have to go to school a certain number of days, or you could be held back. Tardies accumulate and become missed days. And now we get, and truancy is still an issue. If the school chooses to make it an issue, they have the support of policies and procedures.
Right, and at the end of last year, we talked a little bit on a podcast, last school year, we talked a little bit on a podcast about how some schools have it arranged where, if you, or not some schools, I think it's the state of Florida has it where, especially if you're in high school. Now this,
Right.
This kid's 13, so he's probably in middle school.
Yeah.
But if you're in high school, especially of driving age, if you miss a certain number of schools, they can put a suspension on your
Right.
license, on your driver's license.
Yeah.
So it's pretty serious.
So it's a serious problem, because schools could, when you say school is getting frustrated, there are specific actions schools can take that do have some pretty serious consequences.
and are sometimes obligated to take.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So the first thing we want to mention is that the kids who refuse school this way, they usually fall into one of two broad categories.
Right.
One we'll talk about today. The other is probably the topic of another more in
More
depth
in-depth, right. Maybe
podcast.
a Friday podcast.
Yeah.
We can talk about that.
So the first one is the one that we'll talk about today is the fact that they're refusing school for a particular reason.
Right.
There's some instrumental.
Yeah, we call
gain.
it instrumental. There's
Right.
there's some reason that they're doing it. There's
Right.
some gain that they're looking for.
Right. And the other is there could be a psychopathology going on.
Right.
And that calls for more in-depth conversation because it could be any number of things ranging from an anxiety disorder to a mood-related disorder
Right.
and lots of different things in between. So
That's right. And that
we'll
would be
save
a
for
very
another
different
time.
kind of problem, because if a child has an underlying mental
Right.
illness, then school refusal and temper tantrums and emotional outbursts have a very different flavor
Right.
than the child who is just refusing to go to school. And we usually say either because they're trying to access something or they're trying to avoid something.
Right.
And that's the most reasonable explanation. Right. It's most likely that it's an instrumental issue. It's an instrumental cause.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about those two pieces under the instrumental column.
Right.
And that is trying to get something or avoid something.
That's right.
All right. So.
And you can remember that with double A.
Right.
Okay, access or avoid. That's
right.
typically how we teach this stuff.
So when we think about accessing something, a lot of times our experience is that a lot of times when kids are refusing to go to school, it's simply because home is much more exciting. Home is much more engaging because of electronics, because of video games, because of iPads and phones and all of these things that they can do at home that they just, quite frankly, can't do at school. And so they're attempting to gain access to those, so they want to stay home. If you and your husband are at work and he's home alone all day, which is perfectly acceptable for a 13-year-old, he's probably spending most of his day playing video games and on electronics.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking when I wouldn't go to school, there was nothing to do at home.
Right.
All of my friends were gone. They were in school.
Right.
We had a single television set that got 3 channels most of the day, to the daylight hours, okay?
I'm not going to make a comment.
No,
this was
you know what I'm talking about.
the radio.
No, there wasn't much on the radio. There wasn't much on TV. I mean, there weren't movies and 24-hour channels. There were soap operas and, kind of variety shows and stuff that appealed to usually adults who stayed home during the day.
Right.
That was typically a woman in those years. And so there was not much to do at home. The action was all at school during the school day. Today, I'm thinking what most homes look like.
Right.
With TV channels and movies and Netflix and video games and computers and Wii's and oh my gosh, home is like it's like a Dave and Buster's.
It's an arcade.
It's an arcade. You're staying. Can I stay home in the arcade or should I go to school?
Right. And,
wow.
and because of how small the world has become, you stay home, and while your physical friends, your directly interacting friends are at school, you may have friends in China that are just getting home from school and they're ready to be on the
video games
and ready to interact. So,
wow.
It's really that access, the first A, that access is a really important piece. And so if that's a problem, or to perhaps even rule that out as a problem, when your child refuses to go to school, you simply remove that access. And so, when you leave for work in the morning, if he's refusing and he's hunkered down and he's not coming out, you take with you video game controllers and iPads and Obviously, you may have to leave the phone unless you have a home phone. A lot of people don't have home phones anymore, right. But you're probably going to want to leave at least a cell phone. Mm-hmm. But take with you most of those things that are going to be the bait for him to want to stay home,
right.
And so that he just simply doesn't have access to that stuff.
Because I can imagine a typical 13-year-old getting up and saying, "Oh, do I want to go to school and do all that work and be bored and blah, or do I want to stay home and play?" Stay home and play is a much
FIFA 17 is pretty good,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
So why wouldn't I want to stay home and play that?
Right. So that if you suspect that your child is just trying to access things, then the solution to that is remove access. Okay,
yeah.
Take them with you. Put them in the car. Take them to work with you if you're not going to be at home.
Right. Now, some things, as I said, are difficult, like phones. I mean, they're probably going to have his phone. But also, sometimes it's really difficult with television because how do you take you can't take the TV with you. But if your home is like my home, if you just take the remote control, you really take away most of the access to things because
that's right. We have a TV that you can't use without the remote control.
Yeah, if you have cable boxes and things like that, it's really difficult to surf and to get around to different places unless you have the remote control. So maybe just taking the remote control at least limits or creates some additional work.
A little bit of an obstacle
involved there.
Right.
Now so that's the access, and so you remove the access to those things to hopefully curb that behavior. The other side is avoidance, and so this is where you need to talk with the school and you need to find out if there's something going on at school that's creating the problem, whether it's a bully, some learning difficulties or problems with some of the classes or some of the teachers or something. Get in there and talk to the school to find out what's going on there to see if your child is really just simply avoiding conflict or problems.
Right. And it could be academic, or it could be relationship.
Right.
Either with a teacher or with another student or with a group of students.
Right.
So if you suspect that they're trying to avoid something at school, we used to call this, what did we used to call this years ago? We call it separation anxiety, school phobia.
School phobia.
We used to call it school phobia. Well, then we realized that it wasn't really school phobia. It was more of in young children, it was separation anxiety.
Right.
Okay. And so find out if there is something going on at school. You're going to have to talk to the teachers, and find out if the child's struggling academically or if there might be some sort of relationship problem. Right. Because again, when you're 13 years old and you're lying in bed thinking, "Do I want to go face this again?"
Right.
It's a very simple solution. Is to say, "No, I'm going to stay here. I don't know what's going to happen if I stay home.
Right.
But I know that I don't have to deal with that." Okay?
Absolutely.
And so it becomes a reasonable choice to stay home.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and so you want to explore that as best you can, and address whatever issue there is there to address.
Right.
So if it's access, you take away the access. If it's avoidance, you figure out what it is that they're avoiding and you remedy there. The bottom line is that it's of course, and this may be a very obvious statement, but it still needs to be said. He needs to go to school.
Right.
He needs to be in school. If he's stressed about something, if he's anxious about something, the only way that you really get over that is to face it, is to go to school and work through it and with support and with assistance and maybe some therapy and things like that. But you have to work through it. There's a very small minority of students in mine, I think our opinion, there's a very small minority of students who really are candidates for homeschooling. That requires a very different set of circumstances. It requires a very different child. It requires a very different parent-child relationship. I mean, if you can't get your kid to do homework, why in the world would you think that you can get them to do homeschooling?
Right.
So a lot of parents, when their kids start to refuse school like this, they will say, well, you know what, I'm just going to homeschool. I'll put him on the hospital homebound program or something to that effect. And more often than not, I think that turns into more problems than it does solutions, because if you're already having those kind of compliance issues, I don't know why we would assume that it would be different if you were homeschooled.
No,
It requires so much structure and so much.
You can't do 1 hour's worth of homework, but you're going to do 4 or 5 hours worth of homeschooling. That's not a good trade. There's another thing that you may want to do if you haven't already done it. We always like to talk in terms of setting up how things work in our family. So like dating, we always talk about dating. When is it okay to date? How old do you have to be? And if in your family you say you have to be at least 16, if a child asks at 13, say, no, we don't do that here.
Right.
No, the answer is no. It's always going to be no. Same with school. And what some families do is they say, if you're not bleeding or have an elevated temperature, you go to school. Okay. In this family, unless you're bleeding or you have an elevated temperature, because you're not allowed to go to school if you have elevated
throwing
temperature.
up. Those are the three. You always have to have three.
I don't do throwing up.
You don't do throwing up?
Because kids can make themselves throw up.
You can... Well, I won't get into that.
Okay, so let's add throwing up. You like three things, okay? No. Bleeding, throwing up, fever.
You can tell when throw up is really from being sick versus being forced.
Okay, so we have three reasons.
The smell.
And you just set that up. You just set it up in your house. Like, wait, are you throwing up? No. Are you bleeding? No. Do you have a fever? No. Then you go to school. In our house, you go to school unless it's one of those three things. Our kids always sought to take a day off. They're tired. They're kind of headachy. They don't feel good. So they say, oh, I'm really sick today. Are you bleeding? Do you have a fever? Are you throwing up? If not, you're going to school. Right. And it makes it easier because then you don't have to try to judge, well, is he really sick? Is he this? Is he this? Is it? Then you don't get into that negotiation.
Right.
Are you really sick? Another thing you can do is give the kid an hour, and if it doesn't look like he's really sick, get dressed. I'm taking you to school.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a day off. So we have to value going to school, okay? And we do that by insisting that they attend, unless there's something dreadfully wrong.
Right. So,
but again, this is all about this first category, the kid who's trying to access or avoid something.
Right.
We don't want to push these kids who might have a real serious underlying problem.
Right.
Different issue,
the
different solution.
Right. Psychopathology is a little bit different. So.
Right. Yep.
All right, Kim. Well, I hope that's helpful.
Hope it was helpful,
and maybe helpful for other people. I know that a lot of people this time of year, as it's getting close to the end of the first 9 weeks, the first quarter of the school year, report cards are going to be coming out soon and everything, and it's really putting a lot of pressure on everybody to just kind of wrap things up and get those grades up if they've been dipping.
Right. You only have about a week to go.
Yeah. So
the semester's going to end.
So give it a shot. Think about it. Talk to the school. See what you can do. And be patient.
Try it out, and let us know how it works.
Yeah, okay. Be patient. It will, hopefully, if you follow some of these steps, it should work out pretty well. So, all right, we will be back tomorrow with Brown Bag. Tomorrow is Hodgepodge, and I have a couple of ideas. We got to talk about.
Too.
Oh boy,
I do.
And we'll see you tomorrow morning for on Thursday, October 13th. That'd be great.
Okay.
Too bad it was not October 13th on a Friday.
Friday the 13th in October.
What if Halloween happened on Friday the 13th? That'd be weird. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
And it wouldn't be the last time. You have a good day today.
All right. Bye-bye.